Awesome. Alrighty. So I have my good friend Michael here. I am so excited for today because I love what he gets to do. And from foster to blink concept, he embodies all of what we're going to be talking about. So Michael, tell us what you do and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited. So I work at a community college in Huntington Beach, and I run our Guardian Scholars and NextUp program. And so this is a program on campus that works with specifically students that are either still in foster care or were formerly in foster care. And I've been doing it over almost 6.5 years now. Um, and I was a student in these kinds of programs and Guardian Scholars, and so it's been really cool to go from one side of the desk to the other and then get to kind of do this and find my passion so early on. And so very fortunate.
I love that. So you get to walk them through school and or life career decisions and just guide them through that. So tell me a little bit more about what you do specifically. Like if someone comes to Huntington College or Golden West College, what do they do?
Golden West College.
So what do you do?
Yeah, so absolutely. So it all starts at first contact. And so that could be either, we work with other departments on campus to find, students that have self-identified either through various processes or forms with, getting into college, financial aid. At some point, they mark yes to a question that asks if they were ever in foster care. Sometimes I have social workers, CASAs, school counselors, reach out. But as soon as I connect with the student, then we start that process with everything just to get started, right? So for some students, it's filling out the college application, financial aid. Other students, it could just be, trying to figure out the classes. And so I always tell students we work with them from application to graduation. And so once we get them in, and that's usually one of the first barriers, is navigating those processes, because it can be a lot. And making sure that they are able to start the semester off on the right foot. And then, we provide services, financial services, support, that social peer support, every semester, every day if they want it, all the way through until they reach their goal, no matter how long it takes, no matter, how many classes at a time we're here. I always kind of describe to people kind of like almost like an educational social worker in like the most positive sense I can think of. Just trying to be that supportive, healthy, role model. And then, we work with students once, if they want to go into the workforce or transfer to university, we work with them on those next steps as well, whether it's finding internships, making sure they know what institutions have Guardian Scholars and how to apply for those. And then, one of the cool things which we recently got to do or really highlight, we get to stay connected with our students. Right. Typically in college, at a community college, once a student graduates and transfers, that's it. Right. We don't know where they go, what they do. And so with our program, because we are smaller and we are much more connected, we are very well connected to a lot of our alumni. I'm going to one of our former students' graduation from UCI in next weekend.
Wow.
And he was in our program like, 2-3 years ago.
Wow.
But he reached out and I can't wait to be there. And so it's just been really cool to kind of be a part of every aspect of their journey through college, and really helping them kind of just prepare for the next steps and oftentimes helping them figure out what those are.
Yeah, it's the emotional support that people need through college and being that unique family that they can tap back into. Like you said, like once they leave, they're not just leave, they can tap back into just like say like, hey, where are you at? How can we support you, get you to the next level through other maybe resources or people, I love that. And I went to community college too. So community college is near and dear to my heart. And especially with foster care, being both of us being former foster youth, it's a lot to try to navigate this by yourself when, especially like from a lot of foster youth, they don't get this information until they're in it. And then we're trying to help get them to it. So the reason I want to highlight so much Golden West is because you guys are doing phenomenal things. Like, oh my goodness. And so many people who are listening are in California. So I'm like, hopefully one day this goes national, but I love plugging in colleges because I think so many people say like, well, I have to go to a university or it doesn't matter. And that's not the truth. You can get so much education and university level stuff at the community colleges. So I loved my time at community college. I felt like I learned a lot there. Having that support is just a game changer for a lot of people. So I love
Yeah.
that.
I know for me, if I could, sorry, another little story. I was in foster care off and on, and my last 3 years of high school, I was in a group home residential facility. So I was in foster care, and this wasn't, I mean, in my mind, it wasn't that long ago. I, graduated 2010. Um, I guess for some of the people probably listening, it probably was a while
I was
ago.
2008. So I feel that same. I'm like, it wasn't that long ago. And then we're both like, oh, that was
But
long time ago.
I did ILP classes, and it wasn't that, because I know some people I've heard, they had people actively telling them, you can't do this, you won't do this. For me, it was just kind of absence of the conversation entirely, right? No one ever talked about it. No one ever alluded to college. The only reason I went to college is because I thought that's like based on movies and TV and what I see in popular media, like that's what you do after high school, you go to college. And so, that support, and, my first semester at Fullerton College, community college, I mean, I showed up to the wrong campus at first. I was walking around the campus trying to find admissions, and I realized it was really quiet. And, I was wandering around the high school, which is right next door to the
Oh
college.
no.
So I made my way to the college. My first semester, I took concrete and masonry, PowerPoint, like a class on PowerPoint, and like a college success class, right? And
Yeah,
so, I mean, it was just, I always say I was like swimming in circles. Like the motivation was there. I was excited to be there. But, once I found supports and once I found the people that were, I always say in the know, they were able to kind of help point me in the right direction. Like I'm still doing all the swimming. It's just nice to have that kind of guidance of like, okay, go that way if that's what you want to do.
mm,
And so, now I get to do that. And so I always tell people, nowadays I work a lot with teenagers, high school students. And so there's definitely a lot more emphasis now, in the last maybe 5 to 7 years, on trying to make sure youth in foster care know their options post high school. Still a long ways to go. But, oftentimes I tell students, it's like if you have the desire to go, that's all you need. That's
absolutely.
it. You just have to have the motivation. People like me, like my whole job is to help you kind of navigate that paperwork and those processes so you can like do your thing and take your
Mm.
classes and then work towards that goal, whatever it is you set.
Yeah. I like that you kind of gave an analogy of swimming in circles, and you're like you were just kind of swimming, and if we just swim in circles we never go anywhere. And that's where a lot of people I feel in the foster care system end up being. We just go in the circle of never ending swimming, and then we're like what's the point of doing this anymore? But
Yeah.
what you've been able to provide in at your school is now and across, California, it's swimming with the direction. Even if that direction
Mhm.
is a cosmetology certificate or a welding certificate or a
Yeah.
degree, we're now being able to say, go that way. And then you're swimming with a purpose on purpose versus swimming in circles. And I like that analogy. In my head, I just see us doing that. And I'm like, man, it gets tiring when you're not getting
It
to go
does.
in any direction. And you're just like, how am I stuck here? And I got stuck at community college for 6 years. So same thing, that the whole same thing where it was just in circles. Okay. So how would you define success?
That is a broad question. I think it really depends on each person. I think for me, success is that continuous attempts, right? I mean, goals can change. My goals have changed constantly. I think for me, it is the repeated ability to keep getting up and keep working towards those goals. Because for me, college, I mean, there were so many times, even now in graduate school, there have been so many times in the last 2 years where I'm like, is this worth it? Do I really want to do this?
Hmm.
And just keep going towards that goal, but it can be open to anyone's interpretation, right? So I think um, part of it too is building that community around you,
Hmm.
because I always tell people, and kind of what I learned is like I always felt like I had to go to college, right? I have to go through, like life's gonna happen. No one said I have to go it alone though now. And
Hmm.
so for me, success is just whatever you make it, it's all about like eventually getting there though, right? And it's about, not having to do it alone. And sometimes it does get exhausting. Like you were saying, that swimming in circles, there are times, especially in college, where students in general question, is this worth it? I mean, this is a lot of work, especially this semester. It's been tough for a lot of students, a lot of people, a lot of faculty. And, it's just getting up each day and just trying to keep going a little bit more. I know for me, for my bachelor's degree, it was always this like long off dream. Um, and then one day it just eventually happened. It's like, oh,
You're
and
like,
then
I
it was
made it.
cool. It was worth it. But it wasn't like every day for those, took me 7.5 years to get my bachelor's. It's not like every day I was like, oh my God, let's do it. Like, this is amazing. No, it was a lot of like, okay. But I had people around me that like kept, willing to push me or even just listen to me like vent.
Yeah. I love that you said getting back up because I heard someone say recently that they said every day you're going to give a different type of 100%. Your
Mm,
100% today might not look like
love that.
100% yesterday, but it was still 100% for today. And I
Yeah.
don't know how many times I was like, is this worth it? Because it doesn't, when I did mine in 8 years, yours was 7.5 years. And it doesn't feel worth it once you get to like seeing all your friends graduate and you're like, what am I doing wrong? But you have to, like you said, you have to get back up. And
Yeah.
I think sometimes we think we're going to get back up stronger or wiser and sometimes we just get up exhausted and we're like, I'm up
Yeah.
here, I showed up, and that 100% for today is 100%. It just looks different than what that would have been yesterday or a year ago. But I like that you said I just kind of got there. I was like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
it feels
It's
like
literally
that.
just doing the next thing in front of me. And, this semester, I just finished year 2 of my graduate program. So I have one more. Honestly, there were quite a few days where I was really proud that I just went to class. Because I
Yep.
work full time, I work all day, and then I go to school at night. And, I love that, 100% is different every day, right? And some
Yeah.
days for me, it was, I'm here. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool because I made it.
And I
And then
think
other days it's like starting assignments and it's, doing all
absolutely.
these things. And I think the other thing is like, don't compare. Like everyone's journey is their own. And so, the student that's able to get in and do their bachelor's in 4 years versus the students that are able to do it in 12 years, it's the same finish line,
It's just
but it's
different.
about, it's your own journey and what you learn along the way and who you do it with. Because I got to tell you, I have friends who did their bachelor's in 4 years and they regret it because they didn't get to do anything in college and now they just work forever and they regret it. I'm like so
Well,
grateful that wasn't me.
I think that that's a big, I was thinking that same thing where it's like, I know a lot of people who finish their degree in 4 years. It didn't look like what the movies do. So let's say that like college is not
No,
what the movies portray, where it's just
that's
like everyone
brutal.
goes to school and sits in a community pool and sits and lunch with each other every day. It's
Like
like,
frisbee in the
oh, it's that.
quad,
Yeah, like no, like it's not the show Community. I love that show, but I'm always like, this is
right?
not what community was, this was not what college was like. And most of us do work and then go to school. And then some of us have families in addition to that. And so you're
Yeah,
pulled in 1,000 different directions. But when you're able to sit back and realize that just because someone finished in 4 years or 8 years, it does not take away what you get in the future. And some people, they get
yeah,
their degree done and they're still like, this isn't what I wanted to do, and I'm miserable and I'm still trying to find my purpose and passion in life.
yeah,
So it's okay to, and like you said in the beginning, you said it's okay to consistently redefine your success and
yeah,
decide what that's going to be, because it can change over time. And I think that's a very valuable point. Like success can change. The definition is whatever you want to make it. And we just encourage that as long as it's legal, we
right.
whatever you want it to be. And I love that because I don't
you
think
know,
of us think about that.
yeah, I always joke. It's like I love what I do, and I think everything has happened in the perfect order and way that have led me to where I am today,
Mm,
right? However, I always joke with my students. Honestly, one of my biggest regrets. So when I was going through college, right? Because I had a terrible high school experience, foster care. It was and so in college, I was like, I want to do it all. And so I would talk to people and they would be like, oh, my biggest regret is I didn't join clubs or I didn't get a job on campus or I didn't study abroad. And so I did all those things. Now I can say my biggest regret is that I didn't take longer. Like, I wish I could have taken a little bit longer just to, like, enjoy and experience new things in college.
Okay.
But, I'm grateful for where I am today, and who knows? But,
Do
I
you
mean,
feel do you feel like you experienced those things, but just to check them off the list, not actually like being present with when it was happening?
no, I
Or
went
do you
all
wish you did
into it,
more?
like, I worked on campus for years, even when I transferred. I was also heavily involved in, like, the LGBT club at my college, including being, like, the president. And then, I got to study in Germany for a year, and, all of these things that really shaped me, and all of my development, my graduate program, we learned about, like, student development and people's, lifelong development, and a lot of these theories are based in, like, childhood. I'm like, it
Mm,
doesn't really there wasn't a lot of development going on. A lot of my growth and identity exploration and all of these things happened as a college student when I was out of the system, doing my thing, and really for the first time getting to, like, make my own decisions,
mm.
getting to decide what I want to do or what I don't want to do. And so, everything that I did 1,000%.
I
And
love
it really helped shape me
yes.
into, who I am, because I didn't know who I was for the longest time. I knew who I had to be when I was in the group home and when I was, in all these other situations. But now
Mm.
I'm in college and I'm like, I don't know.
And
And
in
so, I
college,
got involved.
you're almost like I kind of felt like you said, like in the group home, you had to be something. You had to be, you had to be a certain way. But then in college, you get to be what you want to be. But there's so many options that you're just like, let me explore. Like there's 1,000 options of directions we can go in with our career. It's overwhelming. And one of the best advice that I received was like, hang out with different people, hang out with,
Yeah.
go to different classes, take different classes to see if you are interested in that. And then she said so I failed my first semester and then I had to take her class and I was like, ugh, success in college, this is stupid. And it was the best class for me. And she,
Yeah.
because it said like time management. I'm like, I'm good with my time. I was not good with my time. And she broke it down. I was like,
I'm
oh,
grown,
I
don't
am
you?
horrible at this. But she said something to us that I was just like, interesting. So she had said, when you are planning your future, take a class and see what your interest is in. If you do not want someone to ruin it for you, do not make this your career. If you're willing to let them ruin this passion that you have and you get back up and say, it's worth it, I'm going to do it again, that's the direction you should go into. So
Mm,
if you don't want someone to nitpick your photography or you don't want someone to post a bad review about being a cosmetologist, like just keep doing that for fun on the side. Don't make
yeah.
that your career. But if you are okay with someone coming in and saying, nope, that's the wrong direction, go do this. And then the next day you say, you know what, that was really hard. That was not a great conversation, but I'm willing to get back up and do it again. That's the
Hmm.
direction you should go in. And when she said that, I was like, oh, so I'm not going to pursue music. I'm not going to become a teacher for these specific grades because I was not okay with someone coming in and ruining that. And I would just find places I can volunteer. So I think that we don't get told that enough as a foster care kid.
Hmm.
Like, you're used to having to portray who you are over here. You can explore that as an adult. And I like that you said that because I felt that same way. It's like, I can make my big decisions now. No one's making them for me, but I also don't know what decisions to make. So let me find resources to ask questions. Like it's okay
Yeah.
to ask a professor and be like, hey, quick question. What bank account is the best one to get?
Yeah,
No.
absolutely. I do that with my bank. Like, I called them a couple summers ago and I was like, what does refinancing a car mean? Like, and they walked me through it. And I was,
And it's a game changer because it's like there are no stupid questions. We feel like there is, but they're like, yeah, let me help you. And you're like, what? And I need to do that.
yeah,
Like, I need to look at stuff like that. And I don't because I'm like, yeah, I fixed it and it's too stressful, but I lose out
right.
on better things because I get scared of asking those questions sometimes. So I
Well,
like that.
what's great is, yeah, I was gonna say the other thing is too, is now I know. So when I have students going through similar things, now I can be that resource with them
Yeah.
and walk them through it, right? And so the more I get out of my own way and ask
Mm,
questions and build my own knowledge, even though there's a voice in my head that is like, well, everyone else seems to know what this is, why don't you, right? And it's like,
ah,
well, hold on. It's like ask the questions, and then I'm building my own knowledge that I can use to help other people,
and
other people coming up behind me.
you get access and then give access to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
I love
1000%,
that.
yeah.
I love that. All right.
Right. Because
So,
I
yeah,
want
go
to up Yeah, because I think we should always try, and it's not just within the foster care community, whatever community people identify with or
Yes.
come from. My opinion, it's all about trying to reach back and uplift others. So
Yes.
maybe they don't have to go through similar challenges, or,
Mm,
I want better for others coming up after me.
yes.
And rather, I don't hold the belief that some others do where it's like, well, I suffered, so they should too. No,
No.
no, I don't want anyone to suffer.
Yeah.
Something I do want to mention though is you talked about like finding what you really want to do, right? So I think another part of success, and there's a lot of little successes, right? Like I joined a credit union, amazing, right? However, for those individuals that are pursuing higher education or even the workforce, I think for me, success is also something that makes me happy, right?
Mhm.
While I was a student, I did a lot of odd jobs. I mean, everything from construction to hotels to sales to, all because that's what I had to do, right? However, once I got my bachelor's degree and, seemingly going into a career, I passed up a lot of jobs because I just didn't think it would make me happy, right? I didn't go through all this time, even with financial aid, it's still a lot of time, effort, energy, sleepless
Yeah.
nights that you put into your education or your career. It should be something that you feel good about, that
Mm,
even on a bad day, you still are passionate and behind it 100%. Because I love what I do here, but there are some days where I'm like, oh my God, is it 5 o'clock yet?
yeah.
However, I wouldn't trade it for anything. And, like you were saying, what I would do is I would talk to people in that field and I
Mm,
would ask them, hey, what's a bad day like? What do you like about it? What do I need to get into this field? My career ideas were construction management because I like to boss people around, architecture, English teacher, and there was a few others, and then I finally found like essentially public relations, which is what I got my degree
mm,
in. And I didn't end up doing that because all the jobs looked like they would not be good.
mm,
Um, but now I stumbled upon onto this job, which I didn't think I would qualify for because the job posting preferred a master's degree, and I was like, well, my bachelor's hasn't even posted yet. But,
mm.
there was a voice in my head that said, just apply. The worst they can say is no. And within 3 weeks, I had 2 interviews and a job offer. And my life was forever changed.
Mm,
And, it's just like, and a trend I see with our students, I've been doing this for a while. I have a lot of friends that I was in Guardian Scholars with that are now deep into their careers, a lot of former students that are now in their careers. One trend that I've noticed with our community is those that do persist and go through to, get their bachelor's or further, they all do jobs that they're passionate about. And typically, almost overwhelmingly, those jobs are helping other people too,
mhm.
right? And so it's just something I've noticed. I can't think of any of my friends that I was at Cal State Fullerton with who aren't doing what they wanted and what they love.
Yes.
And that's pretty outstanding considering some of the other data that show like how many people graduate with a degree and then do something entirely different, right? And like with our community, and that's what I think they should focus on is those successes.
Yes.
Not just how many get a job, but how many get a job related to their degree, a
What
cost of
pays
living,
up.
all
Yes.
of those things, right? And I think that speaks so much more to the successes of our students, my friends, our community. That doesn't get highlighted.
Absolutely. And that's actually how, like, not even in the foster care community, but just in general, I went to college because I saw how many people were miserable in their jobs. And I was like, I want to find something I love to do. And I always joke about this, but I'm pretty sure I have over mentally 300 game plans that I went into, like 300 educational plans where I'm like, I could do this and I can do that. And the one factor that I realized early on was I kept saying money, money, money. And then I had a class where the professor's like, make the choices that make you happy in the end. Not, don't focus on the money or the status or the degree. Focus on if you're going to be happy in that role. And he
Mhm.
also said something else where he said, learn from my OS moment, where I was like, OS, I don't want this anymore. I want to be happy and I'm miserable where I'm at. And like health issues are happening because of him being
Yeah.
miserable. So when he changed careers, it was a big financial loss, but he's like, I'm so happy being a professor and traveling the world and looking at art. But when he said, like, learn from my moment, I'm like, oh, I like that saying. And then
Yeah.
you're saying it's okay to explore. And I think you asked a different question. Most of the time we ask, like, do you love your job? What do you like about your job? But you said, what does your bad days look like? Ooh, that's a game changer of a question. Like, let's sit on that, because I have not heard people ask people questions like that. What does your bad day look like? And then you get to sit back and go, do I want that? Because that
Yeah.
bad day, it's raw and real, and you're going to have multiple bad days. It's not every once in a while. I feel people will say all the positives about their jobs, and then they won't actually tell you the truth, because
Mhm.
they don't feel like if it got back to their employer, that would be a very good conversation. So just saying, hey, what does your bad day look like? Don't bash your employer, but what does the bad day look
Right.
like? That's more comfortable to answer that question and to get real good answers. And then you said also, like, I love this because someone else said this to me. So you said the worst they can say is no. But what I have realized is that those no's led to better yeses. So even when I got rejected, it hurt like crazy. And it's never fun to get rejected, but it has always led to a better yes. And sometimes it didn't, but it, even that rejection, or that, like, oh man, this isn't what I thought it was, it led to a better outcome than what I
Yeah.
would have thought like 3 years ago. So I love that you're saying that, like, explore, 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 explore,
Yeah.
ask that question. Like,
A no or a rejection is still a form of direction, right? It's like, okay, so this isn't going to happen. Let me look over here now, right? And so at least it is, I had a student who was chronically homeless for, unhoused for years.
yeah.
Awesome student, heavily involved on campus, and their dream was to go to Cal State Long Beach, study psychology, and they got denied a couple times from Cal State Long Beach, Fullerton, LA, Dominguez Hills, and they were crushed. However, then they got an offer from UC San Diego, and they were like, "Oh, I applied as a joke." It's like, who applies to a UC as a joke? But okay. And it took a lot of work with them to get them to see that that might be a better opportunity, because we get so hyper focused on this is what it's going to look like, this is the plan, this is
Yes.
the goal, this is how it's going to go. I don't like uncertainty. When COVID hit, I was not okay. There was a lot of past traumas coming up, and it's really common just with people in general, is like when things start deviating from the plan,
Mm,
it's a lot, right? And so this individual, they did end up going to UCSD, and it has been by far the best thing that's ever happened to them. They are flourishing, and
mm.
they've published research, which is what they've always wanted to do. They got a job on campus in the Guardian Scholars Program too.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
and I haven't heard a negative thing come out of their mouth in well
Mm,
over a year. And we stay connected quite often just to check up and say hi. Um, and it's just like, you never know what could be right around the corner, right? And so even a no is still, it gives you an idea of like where to go.
yes. I love that you said that a no or rejection is still a form of direction, because we often take that as that it's over. But you're saying, like, no, like, this might lead to something even better. And I like that that
Yeah.
kind of rhymes. Because,
Right.
like,
At
that's
least you know
in
the
my
decisions.
head.
So yeah, you know
Yeah.
And now I can go over here, and now I can look over here. It's because you have that closure, like, okay, this didn't
Yes.
happen. You can always try again, right? Never hurts. But sometimes it's, okay, let me go over here.
Yeah.
And I've gotten rejected from a job before that turned out to be a really terrible place to work. I was like, "Whew, dodge that bullet,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's like you never know. But no's are tough.
They
They're
are.
challenging. They hurt.
Well,
But
I think they do hurt and they do challenge us, but I think that that's where you come back to the grit aspect of things, where it's like, am I willing to get back up and try again? And I know a lot of people who will tell me, like, Denisha, I'm going to call them and I'm going to ask them for a reason why they rejected me. I want to keep going and put my energy into this. And I'm like, no, like, roll back. Going and wasting our energy on doing something like that, like tracking down why we were rejected, is so much worse than just saying, you know what, let me redirect my focus. And I kind of love that they were like, I did this as a joke. I applied to this college as a joke and I got in, and it was the best thing for them. Like,
yeah,
heck yeah. Now that doesn't always happen, but we get to learn from that experience. And like, I know we both have said, like, we're jack of all trade people. We have had a lot of odd jobs, but in our jobs that we do, it all comes into play. And so we're
yeah,
just like sitting here going like, wow, like all of this comes back to, if I let it, I can use all of the things I've gone through to
oh
help
yeah,
someone else. And I think you do that very beautifully, where you just are like, hey, these are the mistakes that I've made. Learn from my mistakes so you don't have to go through them. But like, let's look at the positive side here. Like, what if this does help redirect us a little bit? It might look different than what we want, but it really helps us. We have to break away from that mental, like, our success is straightforward, because it's never
yeah.
straightforward. Um, and that does hurt when we when we don't get to go straightforward, but it's a good thing because then we get to help more people along the way. So I love that you said that. Okay, we're going to shift a little bit. If
Okay.
somebody wants to do what you do, what advice can you give them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, short form, do the work on yourself. Um, that's the short form. Elaborating a little bit. So I applied for this job. I like had a bachelor's, and I don't even think I needed a bachelor's, honestly. Um, Long story short, I had no idea what I was doing for like 2 years, right?
Mm,
But I went for it, right? And so if someone, if any people listening are part of these Guardian Scholar programs, part of these other programs, and that's something a lot of our students want to go into helping professions, right? A lot of them, but being a social worker, not for everyone. Definitely not for me. Being a doctor, being a nurse, not for me. Um, However, with any helping profession, especially if you want to give back and serve your own communities, be it foster care, be it cultural, racial background, etc., be acutely aware of your own traumas, experiences, because they will come up in any helping profession. There are studies on studies for nurses, for social workers specifically, and then I would even venture to say like counselors or people that do what I do. I did a presentation or a workshop at the 2019 Blueprint for Success conference in LA, which is like a whole conference on foster youth support in higher education. And
hmm.
it's like 600 people from all over California, the country. We even had Canada there.
Oh wow.
And the whole presentation was called Foster Youth Serving Foster Youth, and it was about just that, right? Being mindful of your own triggers, experiences, etc., and how that can impact your work and lead to burnout, compassion fatigue,
Yeah.
secondary trauma, re-traumatization, all of these things. And I got to actually present, this is the coolest thing, I got to present with Dr. Sarah Igamez from Cal Poly Pomona, and I met her at Cal State Fullerton when she was the new director of Guardian Scholars, and I was an incoming student.
Oh
And
wow.
now we get to work together as professionals.
I love that.
And she's an incredible woman. But she shared her own story about how like it just came out of the blue. And for me, I was talking about how like there are some times where I felt because there's some distance between some of my experiences and now that I'm good. No,
Yep.
that is not how that works. It's insidious. It's very sneaky. And you know what? For the first 2 years of my job, I was just trying to fake it. And I did
Mm.
get burnt out and I wanted to quit and I was just overwhelmed. And then, I started to do the work on myself, right? We talk about post traumatic stress, but, I like to talk about post traumatic growth and
Mm.
start the healing work and start the growth and looking at the positive aspects and how do I turn some of these negative coping mechanisms and turn them into positive is, as I always say, use my powers for good.
Yes.
And, having done that, I have become way more confident in my ability as a professional,
Mm.
as a future counselor, and just as another, peer from foster care getting to help other people that are, similar experiences. And like it's just been a game changer. But I think the most powerful thing is I feel like I have my power back, right? That I am taking back my story, my history. I think so many of us, or I'll speak for myself, a lot of my past experiences really controlled me as an adult for a very long time.
Mhm.
And I just thought that was just the way things are, right? And so I did seek therapy and I love my therapist. She's all tatted up. She's great. Um,
I'm
and
not
I
his
started to,
therapist.
huh?
I said I'm not his
Right?
therapist.
No, this is great. Um, but that's scary, right? Because I too have had
Yeah.
bad experiences in therapy. I've had bad experiences in clinical settings, but
Yeah.
honestly, it was very empowering to start to like take the power back in my head and my experiences, where
Yeah.
now I can. Yeah, it was just honestly, it was like the most freeing thing ever. It was
Yeah.
very uncomfortable and it was very painful at sometimes. In fact, with post traumatic growth, they don't recommend it while people are in school because, you have to open a lot of these wounds in order for them to heal
Yes.
properly.
Yes.
And so I think, being in the helping profession, whether it's like that is so necessary because if you don't take care of yourself, you're never going to be able to adequately or effectively take care of your clients, your students, these kids, right? If any of you are working with youth. And that was a hard truth to swallow because, like, I would much rather just like sweep things under the rug and ignore them because that's more comfortable.
Yeah,
But it's not really. It's not. And
absolutely.
so that would be my advice, not just for people who want to do what I do, but just anyone coming from the system who's still like, I don't know, fears people will find things out or fears that, just all of these just anxieties and fears that were just like rattling around. I call it free floating anxiety. And it's not a fun way to live. I will say though, I am still connected with like maybe two people that I
Mm.
was in the group home with. And I love these people dearly. We've been good friends for a very long time. And we've had similar experiences, similar all of that, and yet very different outcomes and experiences as
Yeah.
adults. And so I've actually got one friend who has noticed. He's like, "What do you do?" And so I get to talk to him of like, "This is what I did," and um, it's just, and I feel like a free person. Like I don't feel like my past controls me,
Mm.
and I'm not in fear, and which it really opens up that possibility for success. It really opens up like the limits, right? Or there are no limits to what I want to do, what I can do. And it's just been like the most powerful thing I've ever experienced. And I
Yeah.
kind of wish like everyone would do that. But I can't make that. And so, what I do though is I get to use my experience and I do get to challenge some students,
Mm.
in a very loving, empathetic way. And they know it comes from a place of love and care because we have that relationship, that rapport. And just really start to like pose different perspectives and questions where, maybe they might be willing to like do that work earlier than I did. Right.
Mm.
And so it's just, again, using my experience to help those coming up or those around me. I am not an expert on all things, but I know my own experience. And if that can help other people, then hey, I'll do it. That's the
I
goal.
think there I was jotting down notes because I'm like, you hit on a couple key things that I'm like, oh shoot, like I think that there is a bias between some of us where we think like, oh, I'm so far distanced from my trauma that I'm able to speak into this. And what could tend to happen is that we start to get upset with people when they're not taking our advice. And
Yeah.
I think, within education, I've always heard people say, like, we can't drag people across the finish line. We can't force them across the finish line. All we can do is show up with water and cheering them on and say, here's a towel to wipe the sweat off. And like,
Yeah.
you can do this. But you said, like, people will notice a change in you when you're working on what you went through, and maybe they are in a place of taking that on and saying, I don't want to be there, I don't want to have to take as long to heal on this. But I think we forget that just because we healed once doesn't mean we don't need to do a deeper level of healing on another day. So what got me to where I'm at now is not going to get me to where I'm going. I have to actively be working
Yeah.
on those emotions, because at any point there might be days where I say, hey, I was in foster care, or hey, I had a hard time in school because of dyslexia, or whatever I might say. That might not hurt me emotionally, but then on a weaker day, or a day I'm more sensitive, all of a sudden I'm spiraling down. So it's
Yeah.
like, I can tap back into therapy. I can tap back into the resources that have helped me before. But I've noticed as we grow, sometimes what we did to get to where we are, it doesn't work anymore. So we have to get new tools to say, okay, if I want to keep going in this way of
Yep.
helping people, I have to pour back into myself. And I know that for myself, I was at an event and they were like, who still has like a mentor? And I was the only one who didn't raise my hand. And I was like, oh, and it hurt. I was like, oh, this doesn't feel good. And it really was because I got into a thought process of I didn't need anyone to pour into me. And I realized this year, I was like, I don't like that. I want people to pour into me, and not from, I think sometimes mentorship can be messy. And not from a place of like judgment, but a place of like healing, where it's like, hey, you're
Yeah.
pouring out to all of these people. If you have a mentor, they're just going to say, how are you pouring back into yourself? They're
Yeah.
not going to automatically assume, come into this conversation and be like, well, you're giving too much, you're doing too much, stop doing XYZ. Like, that's not what a mentor is supposed to do. They're supposed to come in with a loving judgment to say, hey, what are you doing to pour back into yourself? And
Yeah.
that's where therapy can come in. So I love that you said that, like, you might be feel distance from your trauma, but you're not that far away from it. But also too, when we're speaking, we have to be very mindful that who we're speaking to is very close to their trauma. And so
Yeah.
we have to watch what we say. But
Yeah.
as we pour into others, we still need to pour back into ourselves. Uh,
Yeah. And that's specifically if you are in a helping profession. If you want to do architecture and
absolutely.
you just want to work solo, but more power
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah.
But also, therapy is not the only way. I have friends who have gone through spiritual methods, meditation, self-help. Like, there's a number of ways, but what I would emphasize is, if you notice something is off, right? For me, I just noticed things were off. I was not okay.
Mm.
And because I love what I do, but I wanted to quit. I wrote my resignation letter like 3 times and just never sent it because I was so overwhelmed and I hated it. What it was is it was, the work with my students was bringing up so much in me
Yeah.
that I didn't know what to do. And it made me uncomfortable. And so my solution is, we'll just avoid it all, which is quit, right? And
Mm.
so, and then I had benefits elsewhere, in my life, professionally, personally, socially. But the thing with mentorship, right, is um, as much as I hate letting people in and trusting and all, because it's uncomfortable still to this day, but I know it's necessary. Um, I can't get everything from one person. So I have a team, a family of support, I with professional and family and personal and school, and it takes a village for this person to be who I am, and I love my village, but I didn't have a village for so long.
Yes.
And I only started building my village later in life when I started to do the work, right?
Mm.
um and so, I know a lot of students, a lot of where things get difficult, and I pull back, right? I got this. I can do this. I have to figure this out. And this is just something I'm dealing with now. It's like I'm going through a challenging time trying to balance school and work for this last year. And
Mm.
I have to learn things the hard way. Like, I have to put my hand on the hot stove a couple times. Like, no one can just tell me, "Hey, don't do that. That'll hurt." I'm like, well, will it though? Like maybe I'm different. And so I have to learn, and then I'm willing to make the change or attempt it, right? And
Yeah.
so, now I'm trying to build that support around me for this next challenge, right? Because maybe I dealt with my anxiety with my classes this semester, but now I got to do it again for fall,
Mm.
right? And maybe I don't feel as prepared, so I have to do that work again, and I have to build my support again, and all of these things, and so it is a lifelong continuous effort, but it does get a little bit easier each time
Mm.
sometimes. Um, and so yeah, there's no right or wrong way. It's just
I
it's
love that you said it's not always therapy that you need, because
yeah.
I feel like that. Like sometimes I'm like, I feel like I know what to do. And maybe therapy isn't what I needed, but it was the community where it was just like you said, not one
Hmm.
person cannot be our all. People die, people move, people are busy, they have lives. But when we have our people, our tribe around us, and we can just say, hey, I'm feeling this way, even if we're facing the same battle, we're facing it a little bit differently, but there might be another level that we have to go down to like, okay, I have to deal with this in a different way. And I know for myself, like when anyone raises their voice, I'm like, ooh, this does not feel good. Don't like it.
Right.
I automatically block up, and like you start pushing back on me, and it's someone who's just frustrated. So I've had to ask, like, hey, community, am I seeing this the right way? And they go,
Right.
this part,
Absolutely.
until this part of that conversation, that's where you went up to
Hmm.
and this was not
Great
okay, but
example. Yeah.
here's what you can. And that's where my community plays a part, a huge thing. And I don't need to be like, hello therapist, I can't handle my emotions. It's more of just like community, like, am I seeing this the right way, or am I just being emotional?
Hmm.
And that's such a powerful thing that you said that, because I think we do always push therapy. Therapy is the only option, but I love that you're like, hey, sometimes it's community we need to build. And that is such a weird feeling to have to go in and say, yes, I need to do this. But I love that. That's like huge for
But
me. I'm gonna take that
you
advice.
know, the best part about that though is as an adult, out of care for some time, is I get to choose who's in my community, right?
Mm.
Um, Family's always a complicated topic, but for me, I do love most parts of my family. But my family, right, is
Yeah.
comprised of so many people that I do love dearly. If they need something, if they need help, I will drop everything for them.
Yeah.
And we're not blood related, right? And so it's so yeah, I just love that, like it's ever growing, right? And sometimes people in that community may exit, but
Yeah.
there's always an open door if I deem someone trustworthy and important to me. I get to decide, right? And so it's not like when I was younger where you're told where to go, you're in this home, you're go wait 4 hours in court to be seen for 2 minutes by a judge. um it's like I have that power as an adult, and I have had bad therapists where I have had to find a different one because I'm pretty sure one was homophobic, and I was like, oh, I don't have to do anything other than pick a new therapist. That's
Mm.
and leave a bad review, right? Definitely left some feedback.
Mm.
um but it's like I have that power, right? And I don't have
Yeah.
to let it control me and own me. It's like, oh, and so when building your community, you have full power and authority to decide who is in it.
Mm. I love that. That's a good point, because I don't think sometimes we feel like we have that. Um, and I want to challenge people who are listening. Sometimes it's not the best for you to get people who are just going to agree with you. Like you
Right.
do have to ask yourself, like, do I want someone who's just going to agree with me and be in my corner every single time, or do I want them to be honest with me, to say like, hey, no, you are being emotional on this? Because that's where the real challenge comes and the real growth comes, is that
Hmm.
someone who loves us can make us a little uncomfortable, but in a loving way, to say like, hey, I want to challenge you on this little thing here.
Yeah.
But if they're not doing it and they're being rude in the way that they are, you can choose
Right.
someone else and say, you're just not the way you come
And I've
across.
had that happen. I have had people that I have exited the system, right? The
Yeah.
community, the social support system. And that's okay. It's just, just like friends, just like anything else. It's like sometimes things change, right? And it's not the end of the
Yeah.
world.
Yes.
I was gonna say something lastly.
Yeah.
I don't know, I forgot.
If you
Must have
remember,
not been that important.
it's always important though. And then we're like, oh, that was what it was. It was good. But
Oh, the growth, right?
yes,
I don't want to be, I don't just want to be successful. And, it's okay to want to do things for money. I always tell
right.
students, as like adults, we call it stability, right? Like, I want to be able to be stable, right? I don't, and that's okay. But I think something you mentioned earlier, which was great, is, I would rather do something I love, because when I got hired here, I had four other job offers that paid a lot more. And I
Yeah.
turned them all down because this would make me happy. But it's
Mm,
not that I just want to be successful, like you just said, is I want to be a better version of myself. I
mm,
want to be kind. I want to be someone that other people like having around and really, I want to be a good person. There's
mm,
enough animosity. And sometimes, I need my people that are just going to be like my ride or die, right? Agree with me. Yes, screw that person. You don't need these people. But most of my support circles are people that are going to empathetically and lovingly challenge me,
mm.
right? And be like, well, that's not how I see it. And I know, like, okay, and I have friends that will be like, well, do you want to hear what you want to hear, or do you want to hear
Mm.
like truth? I'm like, okay, give me the truth. It stings, but like that's how I grow.
I
And I
love
love
that.
that you mentioned that.
I really like that you say it's stability. There is nothing wrong with stability. There's nothing wrong with getting the ability to pay for the car that you want. But
Yeah,
you don't just say stability is the only thing I focus on. When you have stability and happiness, you get
right.
to grow versus being stable and then just kind of being emotionally exhausted all the time. And you're just not going to be happy. And you're going to get to a point where you're like, none of this is worth it. And you won't make the best decision with the best mindset. So we have to have that stability. We get to have that stability and happiness together, but it does take that thinking through and being like, what is the most important for me? I
And
love that.
sometimes time,
Yeah.
sometimes time, you
Yeah.
know.
And it's okay to hop around a little bit and figure out what we want. Like, it's a relationship with our employers, and so we need to have that. But we do get to desire to have nice things, and we shouldn't feel bad about that. But we should also
Yeah,
have something that does make us happy. And if that's money, cool. But if it's more than you're looking for more purpose and passion in life, money is not always
mhm,
going to bring that. Um, just the dollar sign if you're not happy. So I love
yeah.
that. This was great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm going to
You and I can always talk forever.
I know. That's why I'm like, I'm gonna make sure we're like, we literally will go on for like 5 hours. People don't even know.
Yeah.
We'll just be like, let's have a weekly call just so that we can, and we're in each other's communities, and we love it because I think everything you say always makes me go, oh, dang, okay, I got to apply this because it's life-giving information that you provide, and I love that. So I'm so glad that I know you, and I'm so glad that I get to highlight you. Like, it makes me like, yes, this is my friend. You cannot be friends with him, people. He's my friend. No, but
Right.
be like Michael and like challenge yourself a little bit. It's hard, but I love what we got to
Yes.
talk about today. So we'll end here, and then yeah, it'll be a lot of fun to hear this and get this online. So I'm gonna go ahead and pause it here.